The Rugby World Cup is right ahead of us, and if there's one thing we can all agree on, this year will be the most competitive tournament in history. I mean, just look at the world rankings today. There's an argument for each of the top 4 teams being the best in the world. The other 6 countries that make up the top 10 are known for beating anyone on their day. Then there's also the likes of Georgia and Italy who have narrowed their losses to top tier nations year on year, and the Pacific Island countries, which are all receiving a huge boost heading into the World Cup as eligibility laws have relaxed. It's a complete open field and the competition's never been greater, so I thought today we should take a look at what winning the World Cup would mean for each contender. First off, Uruguay, Namibia, Romania, Portugal and Chile would all need to do the impossible. These teams are typically seen as the punching bags of the World Cup, and while it would be a great thing for rugby in those countries and their regions, it would probably be terrible for the club competitions we follow and force the powers of pro rugby to make some significant changes. Now, every other country at the tournament has a much better chance to win the World Cup. The Azzurri are ranked 14th, but have come within a try of beating competition heavyweights France this year, and have stayed in the contest every single game. If they were to take out the title, Edge Capuzzo and Paulo Gabisi would cement themselves as the most dynamic duo in world rugby, and commentary of that famous last name would trend around the world.
Capozzo, 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 Capozzo!
If Georgia went on to win the World Cup, you'd have to think there'd be some extension of the Six Nations to include them moving forward, and rugby fans around the world would notice more than just their last names being very similar sounding. If Samoa, Tonga or Fiji went on to win the World Cup, it would be up there with one of the most feel-good moments in sporting history. Small islands that have been a large part of the rugby community with not much silverware to show for it. Now, it may not stimulate the rugby economy as much as other nations, but World Rugby would be giving themselves a huge pat on the shoulder after relaxing eligibility laws to boost competitiveness. It'd also give Super Rugby a much needed buzz after introducing the Fijian Drua and Moana Pacifica into the competition. And trust me, this has never been more possible for Samoa and Tonga especially. Each country has been bolstered with an influx of former All Blacks and Wallabies, most who chased the monies in overseas club competitions and became ineligible. If the Cherry Blossoms went on to win it, they would cement themselves as a global powerhouse, while Jamie Joseph would probably be hailed as an emperor. Due to their outstanding performances in previous years, it may not generate the surprise package title spark as I feel that peaked in 2019. Wales, well, they certainly need a World Cup. That awesome era of Welsh rugby with freakishly big backs seems so long ago now. Without a doubt, it would restore some pride in the jersey and be the beginning of a new era for Welsh rugby. You'd expect the Welsh regions to surge in competitiveness in the United Rugby Championship and Warren Gatland to officially be inducted into the royal family as the Prince of Wales. Now, Argentina could pull something off that has never been done before. They would be the only country in history to be World Cup champions in rugby and soccer at the same time. And while this may be a while away, I have a pretty good hunch they'll be shortlisted to host the 2035 World Cup. You can't help but to think this would all but seal the deal for them with a huge boost in national interest. Also, Augustine Creevy would become the oldest player to win a World Cup. Like many countries that have started sliding down the ranks, a Rugby World Cup would be an absolute game changer for the Wallabies. Eligibility laws would continue to be relaxed, Eddie Jones would become the king of the short-term coaching stints, and the 2027 Rugby World Cup would have a host nation that are defending champions. Something that hasn't been seen since the last time Australia hosted a World Cup, and Super Rugby might actually be able to survive for another few years. Moving on to England, the entire narrative surrounding English rugby and the Rugby Football Union would completely change if they came good by September. Our English brothers would have a national team kicking goals, renewing interest and investment in rugby. Premiership clubs would receive much needed financial relief, Steve Borthwick would lock in his spot as England's head coach for the next decade, and we'd expect some seriously sloshed interviews from Joe Marler on our TV screens. There's a good chance they pull it all together soon, only time will tell. Scotland are one of the form teams roaring into the World Cup. Quality players with plenty more on the pipe, they're a team with a plan that's found some great composure at an international level. It would mean the hard work Scotland's put into developing their players and achieving success at a domestic level will have paid off. It would also alleviate a lot of built-up frustration from the 2015 Rugby World Cup and their inconsistent performances over the last few years. Scotland's drawn a really tough pool. It'll be a really tough ask, but another robbery or exit may just be the boiling point for many Scottish fans. In contrast, success would make a lot of countries look at their current systems for player development as they've managed to take outcasts from other sides and coach them into superstars. If the Springboks manage to go back-to-back without their captain Sia Khaleesi, there will be some serious resentment from the rugby community. Hear me out, as South Africa become the country with the most World Cup crowns, their unbelievable ability to maul will likely result in some law changes to even out the playing field. The resentment won't just come from their mauling, but also their grip on the Southern and Northern Hemisphere will come into question. Sure, a lot of it might be jealousy, and that's to be expected when a team is able to have players play all around the world coming together for tournaments and putting in dominant performances. And whether you love him or hate him, Rassie Erasmus will go down as one of the most influential sports management personnel in history. Hungry to reclaim their title as the best team in the world, nothing would satisfy the All Blacks more than going over to France as underdogs and winding back the clock to put some serious hurt on all the doubters. With some shock losses recently, New Zealand will be very keen to win over the country again. Most importantly, Ian Foster is trying to save his reputation as a coach, and many All Blacks legends will be keen to go out on a high note. For the host nation, winning their first World Cup at home would be an absolute fairy tale. France's long-term investments in player depth, finance and resourcing will all have been worth it. To many fans, French rugby will no longer be recognised for their generous player salaries, but a genuine rugby powerhouse. Runners up on 3 separate occasions, this long-awaited triumph would provide so much closure for fans who have seen their team fall short in the past. While individuals don't usually get accolades in rugby, Antoine Dupont is arguably the most influential player in world rugby at the moment and has been building a legacy over the last few years. Winning the World Cup will take his stardom to new heights, becoming a true rugby icon of his era, and there'd also be a countdown for his statue outside of Stade de France. And finally, the gate crashes of the World Cup. Ireland have been so dominant internationally and domestically this year. More than just a shortage on stout following the competition, it would be a truly monumental achievement for their rugby team and the entire nation. It's really a tough ask though, seeing as they've never won a World Cup finals match. And if they're successful against the odds with their high risk, high reward play style, I can definitely see it changing the way teams play rugby right across the globe. Andy Farrell would add to the narrative of him being Ireland's most successful coach in history, and they would have to go down as one of the best teams of all time. Anyways, I'll cover everything you want to know leading up and during the World Cup. Please subscribe to my channel, and if you haven't seen my video yet about how to improve your rugby game, go and check it out, you might find something useful. Thanks for watching.